Okay, everyone, welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us for our webinar, which is special education during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Mike Marotta, and I will be our facilitator and one of our panel members this afternoon. We appreciate you spending some time with us as we go through this important conversation about where we are with this situation with special education. Just a couple housekeeping things. We are recording this, so you'll be able to watch this later on. We will post this up to a couple places. We'll post a link to our Disability Rights New Jersey website, as well as the YouTube channel for the program that I'm the director of, which is the ATAC program. If you're doing a search on YouTube, it's ATAC NJ, ATAC NJ, and the recording will show up there. We'll also send the link to you. If you registered for the webinar today, we'll send the link to you as well, so that you know where it is. You are able to share during the webinar, and we would encourage you to share. You have a chat window available to you. If you find the Zoom toolbar and move your cursor on it, if you're on a computer, move your cursor over it, and a toolbar will pop up. There's a button either on that toolbar directly that says chat, or it's under the buttons that say more. And there's 3 buttons there and it says more, and you can get in that way too. There's a chat bar. The panelists will be watching that throughout. And if you have questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in there, and we will make sure that we hopefully get to them at the end if we have time. So we're hoping to have time. I'm sure we will as we go through. Just to have one less thing working right now, I'm going to turn my video off. There, I'm here, just to prove to you I'm here. There you go. So as we continue on in our process here, I did our housekeeping. Let me get us back on track a little bit. Who we are. Here's our panelists for today. We have 3 members of the DRNJ staff with us today. Myself, and again, I'll be our facilitator slash moderator slash whatever other jobs come my way as we do the webinar today. We have Andrea is with us, and I don't see her picture right now. I do see a box, but I don't see her picture. Andrea Parente is an attorney at DRNJ, and we don't see it. That's okay. I see your box, like your video's on, but it's not showing anything.
Huh.
If you pop on, we'll know that
oh,
you.
No.
That's okay. Don't worry.
Okay.
And then we also have Robert Robinson is joining us today, and Robert's a special education attorney with us at Disability Rights New Jersey. We've had a little bit of a change, just to give you kind of a sense of what's going to happen here during the webinar. Robert is deaf, and Robert was planning to have his interpreter there with him today to help sign and to verbalize his information. But unfortunately, his interpreter had an emergency. So what we'll be doing as we go through the slides that Robert was going to share, I will share those. I will read the script that Robert had prepared, but Robert will be available in the chat box to answer questions, and Robert is here with us today, and he'll be able to join the conversation as we go through. So just to give you kind of a sense of what's happening here as we move through our time together. So again, some of the things as we start and jump into this, when we think about these important things that we're going to talk about today, some of the most important things we need to understand is that the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and Section 504 of the Rehab Act were not designed to withstand this pandemic. Those statutes can handle weather-related disasters or a family crisis, but nothing like this. And this essentially happened overnight, which caught everyone off guard. And it's not like districts had any time to prepare for this. Because the districts didn't cause this national emergency, parents need to be understanding and flexible with their districts. But parents can't let districts take advantage of this pandemic by providing less than what their children are entitled to either. The US Department of Education frantically issued a guidance memo on March 20th, 2020 for all the districts regarding the provision of a free and appropriate public education, also known as FAPE, under the IDEA and Section 504 during this pandemic. However, the US Department of Education's guidance might have actually created more problems and confusion than solutions. The Department of Education's guidance memo that basically states this: if a district is not providing any instruction to the general student population, then it doesn't have to provide FAPE to students with disabilities. If the district is providing instruction to all students, then it must provide FAPE too. Because this first guidance memo caused some confusion, the US Department of Education issued a follow-up memo the next day clarifying that the IDEA and Section 504 do not prevent online instruction. Districts have a lot of leeway to determine the fashion in which to provide educational services that take health concerns into consideration. Districts and parents need to work in a collaborative manner and be creative. In response, the New Jersey Department of Education voted 2 weeks ago to temporarily revise its special education rules to allow teletherapy and other virtual services for students with disabilities while New Jersey is in our state of emergency. Unfortunately, that the districts have a lot of flexibility has produced a significant disparity in services. Of course, the wealthier school districts have more resources and are more ready to loan laptops and other assistive technology devices to families. In the poorer districts, a higher number of families don't have internet access, and those districts have to break the bank to obtain the assistive technology devices to loan them to students. There also is a higher percentage of parents in the poorer districts who lack the educational background and or the English proficiency to assume the role of teacher at home. The other problem is that some educational services can only be provided in person and not online, like physical therapy and occupational therapy for certain students. Regretfully, many districts have been asking parents to sign liability waivers as a condition of providing certain services online. If your district tries to do that to you, don't sign it immediately. Many districts are requesting waivers because they're afraid of a tsunami of lawsuits for failure to provide FAPE during the pandemic. Seek legal assistance because your child is entitled to compensatory services if the district hasn't provided FAPE. Your only concern should be your child. The district's fear of lawsuits is not your problem. Another problem is districts haven't been making clear to parents as to the special education procedures. For example, that schools are closed doesn't mean IEP meetings can't take place. IEP meetings can still take place over the telephone or online, and parents need to make sure they are proactive. Unless the parent has done so already, the parent should have an IEP or Section 504 meeting as quickly as possible, even in the virtual world. My recommendation would be to have a temporary plan that specifically covers supports and services during the pandemic. In many cases, the plan should include a method for tracking educational progress. Sorry, I said process, I apologize. If a classified student is in a mainstream class and that class is receiving online instruction, then the plan should include what accommodations are needed to make sure that the student is able to participate in class. For example, if the student is deaf, then real-time captioning or interpreter should be used. So you get the drift there. As I've already mentioned, some services like occupational therapy and physical therapy for certain students can't really be provided online. So the parent and the district will have to figure out the appropriate strategies and include them in the plan. The reason why you should try to have a separate plan is because you don't want a stay put problem if the child has an IEP. For those unfamiliar with stay put, it is the placement the parent wants the student to remain in if the district proposes a new IEP that calls for a placement the parent doesn't want the child to attend. The parent has to file for mediation or due process within 15 days to invoke stay put while the dispute resolution process is pending. The stay put should be the school where the student was before being forced to be in the home setting as a result of the pandemic. The home setting, the most restrictive placement, should not be the stay put, as it's no one's fault that the child was forced to be home during the pandemic. As you might have figured out by now, providing FAPE has become more difficult. Of course, if the student has not received FAPE during the pandemic, he or she should receive compensatory services. The parents have to make sure to observe the student's receipt of services and track progress. Document everything so that you can be ready to argue for compensatory services when school returns to session. But hopefully, compensatory services won't be necessary because it's a pain in the neck to have a student make up services. With respect to dispute resolution, like mediation and due process, the Office of Administrative Law, effective about 2 weeks ago, started allowing mediation and hearings by way of telephone and video conferencing programs like Zoom, like we're doing right now. So when you receive official notice of mediation or a hearing, parents or their attorneys should contact the phone numbers listed in the official notice to find out how the mediation or hearing can be done, whether by telephone or Zoom or whatever. Remember that this is a work in progress for everyone, including the Office of Administrative Law. So now we're going to turn it over to Andrea, and she's going to talk about some privacy concerns.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me right now?
Yes.
Great.
I can.
Okay.
I can.
Uh-oh. I'm not sure. Mike, any ideas? I might just have to
What's the
speak.
matter? What happened? I can see you and hear you.
I can, okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Great. So someone just let me know they can't see me, but I'm not sure if I have any ability to control that.
Yeah, that might
so
be
hopefully
on, on their end.
Okay. So hi everyone. I am Andrea. I am glad to be here to speak with all of you. As stated previously, I'm going to be speaking about privacy. In this context, you might be wondering, now that all of my child's classes are online, how is that going to affect information related to their special education? Will this information be more exposed, etc.? So the purpose of my portion of the presentation is to give you information that will hopefully allow you to find out more information from your child's schools, and if you're a child's school contacts you about privacy issues, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of where the school is coming from and what they might be communicating to you. So to start off, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. And this is designed to protect the privacy of students' educational records. You might notice a pattern here. FERPA also was not designed for this pandemic. That's because FERPA was not designed for schools that are providing all of their educational services remotely. So your school is probably going to have some kind of a privacy agreement with whichever online educational service providers it's using right now, whether that be Zoom or Google, etc. That agreement might be called terms of service. It might be called a privacy policy. It's sometimes referred to as a click wrap agreement if it's one of those sort of online agreements with a little button where you agree to all the terms of service. These privacy agreements are required to be FERPA compliant. And so far, Google and Zoom have stated that their terms of service for educational programming is FERPA compliant. One thing to know is that when it comes to online services, FERPA compliance only goes so far. And that is because FERPA does not always protect what's called metadata. Metadata is essentially data about data. So for school purposes, that might mean, how many attempts did a student make to complete an activity? How long did it take a student to complete a particular activity? These are examples of metadata, and as long as metadata is stripped of personal identifiers such as name, date of birth, etc., it may not be protected by FERPA. So what does that mean? That means that you can find out more about how the school is taking steps to address metadata. You can be asking your school, what data is being collected right now? What will this data be used for? Is metadata shared with third parties? And if so, how is student data being secured and encrypted? So these are all questions that you can, be finding out more about and finding out what is in these privacy policies. Okay, the next slide is more about the privacy of these online classrooms. You might be wondering, well, can't family members of classmates be in the background watching my child's special education class? So, who might be able to, in some way be present during class? So the first thing is you might have heard about Zoom bombing. For those of you who have not heard about it, Zoom bombing is an issue that has come up. Basically, random people will enter Zoom meetings and post, potentially startling imagery, such as potentially pornographic imagery, etc. So it is an ongoing event. It has happened in the context of schools fairly recently, and part of that is because some of the links to access Zoom meetings are publicly available, and this is another conversation you can have with your school. You can say what settings have been put in place to address the public access to my child's classroom, to address the possibility of Zoom bombing, because Zoom has highlighted that you have the ability to adjust the privacy features within a Zoom meeting. So the administrators have control over the privacy of the classroom. So there are some things that a school can control. There are also, and schools have been highlighting this, there are some inherent risks that come along with online education. So for example, schools have been highlighting that, if a classmate has a family member in the house, it's an inherent risk that, family members are going to be able to view the online class, in the background. And similarly, it's sort of an inherent risk that while your child's online classroom is going on, special education information such as, your child's classification or your child's accommodations needs, as they are, addressed during online class, there can be inadvertent disclosure of that information. So schools have been highlighting some of the inherent risks associated with online learning. And I'll tell you a little bit about why I'm bringing this up, which is on the next slide about school waivers. So schools have been presenting, waivers. Sometimes they call them consent forms, and they'll say that they might say we're presenting these waivers so that you're aware of the inherent privacy risks associated with online education. And this is there of course are these inherent risks. However, the consent forms may include additional content, such as what was previously discussed. These waivers might also include statements which functionally are asking you to waive all IDEA, all special education related claims against the school. They might also state that you're violating New Jersey wiretapping law should you record the class. So right now, special education advocates in the state of New Jersey have raised concerns associated with both of this sort of, some of this waiver language related to any and all claims to access online instruction, related to violation of New Jersey wiretapping law. That is sort of an ongoing conversation. What we can say for now is that if you're seeing some of this language, if the schools are asking you to waive all of your special education rights in order for your child to access online instruction, you can contact our office, before signing anything. So that's my portion of the slide. Thanks very much. I'll turn it over to Mike now.
Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you guys for using the chat window too. I've been watching the chat as we've gone and adding some comments and questions in there. And like I mentioned before, Robert is in the chat. So he's answering some questions as we go through, but we will save some time at the end for questions as well. So I'm going to give a very short overview of assistive technology, and this is by no means meant to be exhaustive in what we can do related to assistive technology in education. But before I dive into my 3 quick things I wanted to share, let me just talk a little bit about our center, because we are a project that is part of Disability Rights New Jersey, but we provide all assistive technology services. In fact, we are New Jersey's federally funded Assistive Technology Act project. So every state in the union and every territory has a project. Disability Rights New Jersey is the home base for the Assistive Technology Advocacy Center, which we lovingly refer to as ATAC. And what we do is we provide assistive technology services to all New Jersey residents with disabilities, including students served in special education, which is our focus today. We do that through a couple services we provide. 3 big services is that we are available to provide demonstrations on assistive technology. So if you're not quite sure what might work for your child, you can reach out to our office, and either one of our specialists or one of our contractors that we work with can reach out to you and provide a demonstration of different types of tools. Typically in the time before COVID-19, we would do that in person. Now, not so much. We will do that through Zoom like we are today. We can provide demonstrations remotely. And that's designed to show you the features of different assistive technology and make sure that we help you narrow down what features make the most sense for your child. Those are demonstrations. We also have a lending center, which is also on hold right now due to COVID-19. But when we do come back online, the lending center has assistive technology items that we can loan to you for 3 weeks at a time. So if you'd like to try something, or if you've heard of some information about a device and you want to see if it might work with your child, you can borrow that. That service is free of charge for anyone in New Jersey. We will ship a device to you, let you use it for 3 weeks, and then provide you with the information to ship it back to us. So there is no cost to you at all for that service. And then finally, our third main service we do is device reutilization. This is where we work with Goodwill Home Medical, and what we do is collect items from the community that people no longer need. Old wheelchairs, old walkers, or perhaps bath equipment, any of those items that people might have but no longer need. They are collected by Goodwill. They are cleaned, sterilized, and repaired, and then they are placed back into the community where they're sold back to consumers for a very reduced rate. And I mean very reduced rate, like a bath chair for $5 and things like that. So that's a really powerful way that we get equipment back in the community. In addition to that, we're doing a lot of training now, and it's all happening virtually like what we're doing today. We host webinars that are focused mostly on assistive technology, obviously. Not always about special education, but we do have quite a few coming up that are related to that with AT. And you can find all of that in addition to information about, we do weekly assistive technology town hall meetings. So we do these virtual town halls where people jump on and they ask a question, and we have a panel of experts from around the country, kind of a rolling panel of experts, whoever happens to be around that day. And we try to help people answer their questions and give them some ideas about how they might be able to meet the needs of a student with a disability. All of that information is on our website, which is AT4NJ. So at4nj.org, and all that stuff lives there. So now that my plug's out of the way, let me go back to talking about assistive technology. The first thing I want to say, and it's what I've been saying to educators since this started, having more technology is not better. Having the right technology is better. And what we really need more than ever now is to not focus on more things, more tools, but instead think about the functions that we need that tool to perform, and then find tools that do that. Just adding 3 more ways that I can connect to a virtual classroom through video doesn't help me. They're all doing the same thing. What is it that I need a video tool to do? And that's really important. So that becomes my first step always when I talk to people, is don't feel this need to layer more things onto people. But what we're really trying to do, and what we're trying to promote through our work at ATAC, is to encourage educators and families to consider this idea of creating a culture of accessibility. In this case, we're talking about remote instruction. And really what happened, I think, as we kind of look at how this went down in the past few weeks, there was a panic to get people online in any way we could. And so schools threw a bunch of remote instruction together. This is my characterization, just my view of it. They threw instruction together. There was very little thought about how the accessibility of that instruction would play out for students with disabilities. Now that we've had a little time, I'm happy to report schools that I'm talking to now are asking better questions about this now, which is great. They're asking the right questions about, are there things we can do to make this better for students? I think those are good questions. So I feel like the panic might be past, and now we're into a very productive time with educators trying to help them figure out what this looks like to provide accessibility in this instruction. So I'm going to leave you with my section of three big things, three quick things we can do to perhaps approach the educators working with our children to give them some quick ideas of something they can try to help the students be successful. And they are looking at built-in accessibility features, making sure they're providing accessible materials, and then finally working to embrace the concept of universal design for learning. And I'll go into each of these quickly, just to give you a sense of what I'm thinking of here. So first, built-in accessibility. Every single device we have now, whether it's your phone or a tablet or a computer, has built-in accessibility features. Many of us don't even know those features exist in our device. These features allow us to customize the device to meet our needs. This should be our first place to start. It's not about buying more apps. It's not about getting more software. It's about taking a step back and a pause and think, can my device do that for me? And some of the big things we see for supports within our devices and their built-in accessibility are things like using text-to-speech. So I have text that's displayed on the screen and my device reads it aloud to me. Or maybe speech-to-text. I speak into my device and text appears on the screen to eliminate typing. Maybe it supports for visual or hearing impairments, having items on the screen read aloud to me, or maybe using features that are built in, like we're using today. We're using the built-in captions of PowerPoint to provide captioning support. Now, I will be honest with you, I am not very impressed right today with the captions. They are not doing a good job. Monica is doing a fantastic job. I can watch her in the side. But the captions are struggling a bit today. But many of our tools will also provide built-in captions, whether it's PowerPoint or Google Slides, that allows us to provide accessible content to someone. And then maybe there's even supports for physical access. If we're working with a student that has a physical need, perhaps they can't access a device by tapping on the screen or the keyboard, we can insert switch access into this device so that it gives them some alternate access. All of these features are built into our devices. They are built into different levels on each device, but they do exist in some way. And I've given you a few links to use for reference there. All of the big tech companies have a page and a team dedicated to accessibility. And the links are on the slide. Apple and Google and Microsoft, you get kind of the naming convention. If you go to any of their websites, type in the word accessibility, and that's probably the page name. But if you have an iPhone or an Android phone or a Chromebook or a Windows computer, whatever it might be, there are features available in there that can help you help your child be successful with their materials. So that's one. I feel like that's a homework thing. I always tell people, that's your homework. If you've never turned those features on, when we're done today, your homework is to go into your phone and look at those features. Don't turn them all on. Maybe turn one on and play, and then turn it off. But explore and see what your phone has in it. You'll be surprised at how much it can do. So we go back to our three quick ideas, which I've realized they're not becoming very quick, sorry. Our second one is making sure that the school is providing accessible materials to students. And that will mean different things for different students. but it has to be addressed. And I'm hearing a lot of schools that are sharing paper packets of handouts with students. Okay, that's fine. Until I can't read off of a paper packet, until I can't write on a paper form, then that's not accessible to me. And so we have to think about what are the materials that are being given. And all of this, by the way, I should take one quick step back from all this. And I do recognize the issue of a digital divide and availability of technology. I do recognize that. But providing one of these solutions as kind of a blanket solution for everyone is not taking into account the specific, unique needs of each learner. And that's really what we're talking about today. And so thinking about that, what are paper packets giving me? Can I provide some functionality to a student to have that paper packet read aloud? Maybe I give it to them digitally. Maybe I post it on a website. And I say to people, you can either use the paper or go to our website and get it that way. If the material lives on a website, I can use my computer to read it out loud for me. And suddenly the accessibility has raised of that. And I've also mentioned captions. I'm mentioning that specifically because many schools now, in addition to their paper packets, are doing short recorded learning modules and then posting those recordings. Again, that's great until it's not captioned. Then it's not so great because it's not accessible anymore. And so thinking about ways to remind schools that accessibility matters, looking at students' unique needs matters. And finally, the third concept that I wanted to talk to you about is not really an assistive technology concept, but instead it's a way of looking at education. And it's called universal design for learning. And there's three big principles of universal design for learning. And it talks about this idea of providing options for students. It's not designed for students with disabilities. It's not designed for special ed. It's really about designing education in a way that makes it accessible to all learners, regardless of their ability. And I think with us moving to this remote learning experience, gives us a nice opportunity to revisit this idea of giving learners option. Because when we give people options, we also increase the accessibility of the learning because we're letting people come into it from different ways. And so when we talk about universal design for learning, there are three large areas of UDL. One is multiple means of engagement. How do I ensure that students care about what I'm doing? I mean, I don't know if any of you have tried to sit alongside your child yet as they go through some of their learning. How engaged were they? How engaged were you? What could have been done differently to perhaps engage them more? Because if we don't engage, and we've all been there, we've all been in a meeting where we have not been engaged, and what happens? We check out and we're finished. So thinking about engagement. The second part of this principle is representation. How is the material represented for the student? And I've already talked about that with text. If I don't read, giving me a piece of paper doesn't help me. I need some other support. Perhaps I need something in audio. Perhaps I need it digitally that I can read on my computer. I like to think when I talk about representation and options, I like to think of this example. You read a book, you have a paper book, but maybe sometimes you read a book on a tablet, like an iPad, or maybe sometimes you read an audiobook. You're reading the book in all three of those examples, but you're reading it differently. You're choosing the representation mode that works best for you at that point. And I think with remote instruction, we have a really great opportunity to do this and infuse more options in for students. And then finally, the last part of UDL is multiple means of action and expression. How does the student demonstrate their knowledge? How do they demonstrate their mastery of a subject? Most times it's just going to be writing, right? How often is that? It's just open up a document and type, or give me a handout and write on it. Those are the actions and expression modes that get used. But now we're in this remote learning experience. How about using video? How about using audio? How about drawing pictures? We have a lot of options that would allow students to demonstrate their knowledge about a subject. And I think we need to consider that at this time of how we do that. If you're interested in UDL and looking at the guidelines more, I gave you the website there. It's udlguidelines.cast.org. And they are there for you to visit and check out. All right, so we have a little less than 20 minutes, about 15 minutes or so for questions. I know there've been some questions in the chat that I see people answering. I want to give a shout out to Naomi in the chat. Naomi is our Assistive Technology Specialist here at ATAC, and I see her answering questions in there too. Thank you, Naomi. So I'll ask Andrea or Robert, how do you guys want to do this? I guess we should have talked about this more. Let's see. I'm going to go through the chat and see if there's questions to answer. And then we'll go from there. I'm going to turn my camera off so you guys don't see me staring at it.
Robert was just saying he's using the interpreter. He has to use the interpreter because the captions are not great today. Somebody wrote something about the apps being blocked.
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you, Monica. I appreciate you jumping on. This might be one of those moments with apps that when we start talking about this and looking at options, we might have to talk to our child study team to talk to the IT department about unblocking some of these things. If we need those, we need them. This is the time, especially because the students are not in the classroom where they would have some of their traditional supports that could come over and assist. So this becomes even more important to look at these tools and make sure they are unblocked. Joanne says, is the Zoom platform the best option for online learning? I'd be curious. I'm going to give you a big shrug of my hands. Joanne, I don't know. It depends. How about that? That's my standard answer for most tech questions. It depends. What is your school using? Are they using something already? If your school is a Google school, they already have Google Meet, which is the new version of Google Hangouts. And it's part of the package of software that they have. And it would be better to use that, in my view, because it's already there. Why get something different? And as Andrea talked about, Zoom had some shaky privacy things for a while. They've done a little better, but it wasn't designed for education. So we need to think about that too. Here's a question, maybe Andrea or Robert can jump in. Is it appropriate for reevaluations to be done via video conferencing? Is it safe? And that's from Kelly.
Well, some evaluation agencies are doing evaluations through Zoom. We're just finding this out though. So I guess it's possible. It's a work in progress. You know, the agencies are trying to accommodate the needs of what others are doing as well. I did see that one agency was doing evaluations online, so it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. And I think Robert's right with the idea of we'll see. I think everybody's learning this as they go, and we'll try these pieces and see if they work.
I think it also depends on the evaluation, though,
Yeah.
is something to add to that. There are some evaluations that need to be done in the classroom. So, for example, like FBAs. Robert, you might be able to speak more to that.
Right. Yeah, the FBA's, it's a functional behavior assessment. It studies the behavior of the student. If the student's having a problem in school, you know, you wouldn't be able to do an FBA at home. So it's important for you, us to wait until the student goes back to school to be able to do that. And then they have time to adjust as well. During that adjustment time, the student, it takes them a while to get used to it. And then, once that's done, then you can do the FBA at that time. The FBA should never be done at home, unless the issue is how they're behaving at home. That would be the only reason.
I see one question from Jenny about students that struggle with distractions on computers and how that's impacting students now that most of their instruction happens on the computer. I think that's a great question, and I don't have an answer for it. But what I would bring back to that conversation, and each one would be different, and each student's need in that case would be different. But I would talk with the team supporting that student about ways they could facilitate more engagement, perhaps for shorter periods of time. And perhaps that might help. And looking at some work that might be able to be done off of the screen, but somehow documented that it's happening. And I know that's very broad, and I haven't really given you an example, but I'm just trying to think of that universal design for learning approach to this. Is that, does everything have to happen on a screen? That should be our question now. I know it's important that we're remote. Of course, I get that. But being remote doesn't equal being on a screen all day. And for any of you who are working from home now, right, we're on a screen all day, and it's exhausting. It's just not the same. And so we need to find a way to make sure we're providing flexible supports for people.
Robert wanted to add personally, working from home, I have a son who's 6, and he's working through the computer a lot. And I try to print out as much as I can so he can do, write down things or use, different ways, laptops, trying to provide different ways, and try to connect everything together. When he writes something, scan it, and then I can send it to his teacher through email.
And
Yeah, because he's already, hooked with the technology with video games. So I'm trying to, give him less screen time, right? So that's the struggle I'm sure most people are having.
yeah, for sure. I see Kelly bringing up a question about this idea of a bit of a digital divide. If the family does not own a computer for their child to learn on, if all they have is a cell phone, can they ask for a loaner computer from the district? And if denied, then what can they do? I'll answer the first part. You could certainly ask for a loaner and see what they have available that they can provide you. The second part, I'll leave to Robert or Andrea to answer.
Yeah, the school districts have to provide
Compensatory.
So if they if they don't want to do that, they're going to have to figure out a way to provide it or loan something. My school district in Pennsylvania, I believe they bought computers, but they had like a drive-through to pick them up. So they left the computers out, and then you could drive through and pick them up. not just computers, but there's other devices that they had available too.
Yeah, and many schools are doing this because there might be equipment sitting there that's not being used now. And if someone needs it, they can find some way to create a loan agreement to give that to you so you could have access to it.
And from my understanding, some of the school districts are working with internet providers like Comcast for free or discounted internet service. So you know, they understand, the internet providers understand the situation, you know, so they're providing free or reduced cost for services. You know, it's trying to find a solution for everybody. It's a work in progress for all. Like what I said before, you know, it happened overnight. All this happened overnight. So it's not like we had the summer to prepare. You know, it happened overnight. So I can't really see what he's saying. You know, we couldn't expect what was happening because it just happened overnight. Okay, that's better. That's better. All right.
And here's another question that came through. What happens to students that were being evaluated to determine eligibility or triennial evals?
What?
Well, right now it depends on the school districts, how they're handling it and whatever their policies are. And like Andrea said, some of the evaluations can't be done, you know, remotely, so it has to be done in person. My suggestion would be to contact the school district and be proactive and contact them. Don't just wait for the school district to contact the family. Reach out. The family needs to reach out to them. You know, email and keep sending emails, or send a certified letter through the mail, just so you have evidence that you've been trying to reach out to them. But everything is, you know, I'm sure delayed right now. But you have to be proactive.
Here's kind of a broad question about now that we've
move
moved.
on. He's asking, Robert saying, can you move with our phone numbers, put the next slide on with our phone numbers and our address?
Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Yes, there you go. Yes, so as we kind of wind down towards the end, there's the contact information for Disability Rights New Jersey, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. We'll also go through the chat from today and look for any questions we didn't answer, and maybe we can find some way to post them up on our, post up some kind of general answers on our website or something like that.
Robert's saying, and if a school district asks for the waivers for you to sign anything, I strongly suggest you contact us and let us look it over, the language of the waiver, and make sure, you know, you're protected.
That's great. A couple more minutes. Robert, anything else you want to add? Andrea, anything else you want to add?
Nothing on my end.
Okay. Robert?
No, good.
Awesome. Everyone, thank you so much for your time today. Monica, thank you for your help today because the technology failed us. Appreciate it.
It was a godsend.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Thank you. We will record this and we will post it up online so people can access it. And we'll send you a link when the recording is available. So thanks. We hope to see you again soon at one of our other events. Thank you. Have a good day.